After finishing dinner, a homeowner enjoying an evening with his wife settles in to watch his favorite TV program. He's interrupted by an unknown sound from outside. He goes to the window. Unable to identify the sound, he arms himself to go investigate. He discovers an intruder in his garage. Threatened by a stranger, he's forced to defend himself. Stop the Threat starts now. Hello and welcome to Stop the Threat. My name is James Towle. Our guest for this week's episode, Rob Pincus, is here, and he's going to tell us about ICE training in just 1 second. Kelly Muir, she is the author of a book called Instructor Revolution, and she's going to tell us about that. Steve Vandermolen is here, and he is going to be talking to us about Personal Protection Officer. So let me start with Rob. Tell me about ICE training.
ICE is a full-service training company. We do program development, we do curriculum development, we do consulting, and what we primarily do is actually just run courses. We have a team of instructors that work all over the country. We have some associates outside of the country also. Primarily firearms training, all aspects of personal defense, tactics. We work with the military, law enforcement, and private security industry as well.
Okay, so this is a personal one-on-one thing, classroom, in the field?
Classroom, consulting, out on the range. We try to keep the classes relatively small, and we bring in teams of instructors when we have larger groups. If we're running something for, say, like a full company of military guys, we'll bring in 18 instructors and run them for 4 or 5 days.
And DVDs are available?
And we do books and DVDs as well, and they can find them on the website.
Okay, very good. Kelly, Instructor Revolution. Now, this book is primarily directed towards, help me.
It was primarily written for the martial art community, for instructors in that environment. But what I found was after the book was published, the feedback that I got from many trainers and many instructors in different fields was terrific. So what it really can do for a person who teaches anything is just help them to structure what they teach, their material, their curriculum, and then it really talks about raising the standards of expectation. Okay,
and this would have to do with adults as well as children as far as the instructor goes?
Both.
Or it's a program, complete program?
It is not a complete program, it's concepts. Teaching concepts. Okay. And because it is a book about just teaching methodologies, it can be applied to anybody. Okay. And that's one of the things that I think is its greatest draw.
Okay. Steve, Personal Protection Officer, tell me what those duties are.
Well,
in the state of Texas.
In the state of Texas. It's a very specific license for the state. It's essentially a bodyguard license for the state of Texas. I spent 30-some years in the security industry, and when I retired from that industry, met up with a friend who owned a security company, and it was my opportunity to give something back to the industry and to carry it into the next step. So I got the rating, and I've been doing jobs with him part-time now for the last 2 years since we've had the Shooters Club going. But we were doing a lot of interesting work beforehand, and it was a lot of fun.
Okay. Let me tell you a little bit about today's reenactment. This comes from Kansas. We have homeowners with a detached garage. And because of that, we can't really classify it as a home invasion, but it will take place in the detached garage and leaves a lot to discuss. And when we come back, I'll show you part one. Welcome back to Stop the Threat. We've talked a little bit about what's coming up, a garage confrontation. This takes place in Kansas. The garage is a detached garage, so we're not calling it a home invasion. So I'm going to show you part one, and then we'll come back and we'll comment on it.
Must have been the wind. Call the police. Honey, call the police now. Hey, don't move.
Okay, what we know from the police report, there was enough noise repeatedly to get the attention of the homeowner. At this point, I think the homeowner probably has done the correct thing. In fact, he gave it the benefit of the doubt and called it the wind. But when he felt like he was going to go out and actually investigate what was taking place, he went and he found his handgun and he informed his wife to call the police.
Calling the police is where he should have stopped.
Stopped.
Stop. The intruder's not coming into the home. There's no reason to go out there on your own and confront anybody. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what you're walking into. To me, this is a fantastic example of exactly when you need to stop. Call the police, let them do their job. Stay in the house, stay secure.
Okay, it's your home. What are you going to do?
I hate to sound like a broken record, but I agree with Kelly. This is an observe and report moment. The minute you step outside of that house, you're going on the offense instead of defense. And defense wins in a situation like that. Make them come to you. How many of them are in the garage? Mm-hmm. How many of them are not in the garage but keeping an eye out for the homeowner to come out and getting behind him? This is call the police, keep them informed of what's going on, keep them on the phone. Take your gun out if you feel you need to, just in case they do try to come into the house. Maybe yell out the window, the police have been called, get out of my garage.
Yeah, I like that.
And beyond that, why go out there?
Okay, the reason why we do these is to place you in the situation. And we are answering questions and making comments based upon what we might or might not do. Are you in agreement so far? Call the cops?
Yeah, I think at that point, this is where I think we all agree that going out there and seeking the confrontation or creating an opportunity for a confrontation is a mistake. But what I'll say is that you also need to plan ahead because you don't want to get caught up in the emotion, right? And this is where a plan, an actual plan, would have gone far. If, for example, the wife didn't do as she was told, she didn't, she was told, hey, call the police. Instead, she hesitated, she got curious, she got caught up in the curiosity, the emotion, and went looking out the window. He went to get his gun, he got caught up in the emotion of, I'm going to see what's going on out here, right? If they had a plan, if they'd have said ahead of time, and hopefully people watching the show are saying to themselves ahead of time, if this happens to me, I'm going to tell a family member to call the police, they're going to call the police, I'm going to get our gun, we're going to barricade ourselves, and we're going to wait for the police to show up. Because there's nothing out there worth dying for.
And I think you're absolutely right. I have a feeling that the majority of the people are going to have that feeling that they need, I am armed, it is my home, I do need to protect whatever's in the garage. Maybe it's my Corvette or maybe it's just my car. And so they might be, in fact, motivated to do some of the proper things, call 911, call the cops, get them out there, but I'm going to go look. Hey, maybe it is just the wind. Maybe something just fell against the garage. Do I want black and white rolling on that and have them come up and go, oh, what's your problem, sir? And you go, well, the tree fell on the house. Oh, yeah, well, you're calling fire department. I mean, I can understand some of that if they go through it. I can understand where personally I might feel motivated to go out and have a look around before I called 911 even. But I'm not saying that that's the proper thing to do, and you're actually disagreeing with it.
That's why that's what this is all about. It's
right.
about education and discipline and making sure that that's not what people do. Don't put yourself in harm's way if you don't need to be.
And I don't know a 911 operator in the world is going to say, gee, you just heard a noise in your garage. Go out there and figure out what it is and call me when you come back.
Yeah, right. No, I agree with you. Certainly they wouldn't do that. They would roll something on.
But people are afraid they would.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't make the call.
And I think it's very true and very real to think that individual, that man, could have thought in his mind, I live here in Kansas, we're out here in the country, I'm not feeling comfortable with having the sheriff roll on this to come out here, and it's nothing, so I'm going to at least go out and have a look.
But I don't think that scenario indicated that at all. I think he took action. He went and got his firearm. I mean, obviously, he felt that something was completely amiss. I think something that's noteworthy is how angry any one of us would be if I thought somebody was going to damage any of my property. If I thought that they even came onto my property, I am going to be furious because it puts me in a position of defense. It makes me mad. It angers me.
Right.
And I think that's a very important point for any of us to remind ourselves, like Rob said beforehand, that we have to put our own pride in check, our own anger in check. I don't think this guy went out just checking out his house because he thought it was the wind. I think he thought someone was out there. He got the gun. He was going to go deal with it.
Okay, when we come back, we'll see part 2. Welcome back. We've looked at part 1 of what we're referring to as the garage confrontation. Took place in Kansas. The individual chose to arm himself and go out to the garage to see what happens. And that's what we're going to look at right now, part 2.
Don't move. Tell the police I've got him at gunpoint.
Look, man, I didn't take anything. Just let me go. There's no need to involve the cops in any of this.
You move and I shoot you.
If you don't let me go, when I get out, I'm gonna kill you and your wife.
Shut up and don't try anything.
Oh my God! Are you okay?
I'm fine. He came at me with a hammer. Tell him to send an ambulance too. He tried to kill me.
Okay, from the crime report, the individual was pretty upset. He was personally upset that there was someone in his garage. His anger level had already gone much higher than it probably should.
This is going to be a judgment thing, but I didn't see much in that garage that was worth $25,000 or $30,000. And that's what it's going to cost him from this point on. So had he stayed in the house and held his ground instead of going out there, he's going to have enough money to replace it. He's going to spend more money than it would cost him to replace everything in that garage.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And like I said, according to the police report, he was angry. He was upset that someone had invaded his property, and I think that reflects in his actions.
It was his first bad move. And now, let's talk about the fact that he did go outside, right? It's easy to get hung up in saying he just needs to stay in. Right? Sure. He did go out. He had no idea what waited for him in that garage. He had no idea if it was more than one person. In his own anger, he could have missed many things that could have cost him his life.
Okay, how about threatening me by telling me that when I get out of jail, I'm going to come kill your family and you?
You know,
your wife.
obviously this guy, again, we talk about it all the time, the criminal is acting irrationally by being a criminal. So the things they're going to say, the things they're going to do, you know, that could be desperation, or he could mean it. He could have a record of having done it before. We don't know. But the idea is the guy's out there already. We know he's made a mistake. We think we all are in agreement that probably the better thing to do would be to stay in the house. But what Steve's talking about now, the aftermath that he has created for himself, and it's not just the financial. He's got the emotional aftermath. He's got the social aftermath. You know, he may want to move out of that house now. He may be ostracized from the community now. Who knows what's going to happen to him because he took that action of actually shooting another person, which he created the opportunity for. But was he justified when the guy reaches for the hammer after having made that threat? The guy said, I'm going to kill you. He reaches for the hammer. He comes at him. At this point, he's justified in defending himself. Did he have to be there? You know, I think that's the question that we needed to ask when we think about what if we were in that circumstance.
Was he justified?
At that point, absolutely. The guy made the threat, he picked up the hammer, and he moved toward it. That was where the immediacy kicked in. He had no choice at that point but to defend himself.
Yeah, and this kind of leads me to something that we've gone to before. Okay, you're in the garage, and you are holding this person for law enforcement to arrive. He's threatening me. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong here, which in fact did. But assume there wasn't a hammer. Is this the kind of guy that you're going to be able to say, stand there with your hands over your head until law enforcement arrives? See, I think what we don't think about is how to detain people in any circumstance.
Well, it's not our job. In those situations, our job is we don't have the flashy red and blue lights.
So
we don't have
cut
the
him
shiny
loose,
badge.
open the garage door and say, get out of my garage and leave.
It's absolutely an option. And if the guy starts coming towards you and you find yourself backing away so that the guy can get to the door and run away, you're not having to shoot someone. You're not under threat anymore. Could the threat come back later? Absolutely. But this is not the circumstances that you chose to be in.
It's a lot easier to catch them than it is to hold them.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's 100%
So
right.
I agree with Rob. At that point, if letting them go was an option, if you were in a very rural area and it was going to take 45 minutes for the cops to get there, I don't have a problem at all with letting the guy go. With backing out of the way and take his picture. You got a cell phone.
Right. He didn't make the threat, actually, until it was clear that they were calling law enforcement. That's when he made the threat. And then after that, when he felt as though there were no alternatives to him, then he went for the hammer because he wasn't going to wait around for the cops to arrive. Who knows what his record was.
Right.
And in fact, I don't even have that on the crime report. So I don't know what his record was. But I'm going to assume that he was not going to stand around and wait for Ellie to arrive for one reason or another. Again, I think it's worthy to say detaining someone, you need a plan for detaining people. And I don't think in any of the scenarios, and maybe you do, Rob, but maybe you do too, Steve, in some of the training that you actually teach how to detain someone. I mean, I don't know that I've ever
if I'm
gone
going to
anywhere.
teach someone how to detain someone, that implies that I think they should, or there's an appropriate time to do it, and I don't believe that. Again, if you don't have the shiny badge, your job is not to detain anyone. Your job is to protect yourself, your family. Let the police worry about finding the guy and catching him later. You know, and quite honestly, I tell people you don't even approach the guy. So even when that guy got within, kicking distance, grabbing distance, striking distance to kick that hammer out of his hand, he would have been much safer staying 15 feet back on the other side of that garage. If the guy gets up with the hammer in his hand, you've got the gun, he's 15 feet away with the hammer lying on the ground. You don't need to go up there and kick that hammer.
Okay. When we come back, we'll have more. Welcome back. We've talked about the garage confrontation, and we've talked about the fact of whether or not we want to actually try to detain someone for a long period of time, how to do that, or whether we should turn them loose. Anybody want to pick that up?
Well, one of the concerns that I would have about letting them go. Now, I certainly understand that detaining them presents its own set of problems, and it does. I mean, you're talking about somebody now who could be very desperate. But in this scenario, you also have a woman in the house who may be standing at the doorway now because she was already curious earlier and didn't call the police when she should have. Who knows what she's doing? If I'm in that situation and my children are in the house, am I really going to be comfortable letting this individual take off into the dark? I don't know if they're going to end up in the house.
Okay,
now, so.
I think that's a good comment. Are you going to walk him to the door with the gun to his back and then say, run?
There was one situation where a woman went into the garage, she found the guy, and then brought him into her house.
Right.
And I said it wasn't a home invasion, it was a home invitation. She brought, you don't bring the guy in the house. But again, this all goes back to the guy shouldn't have gone outside. If he's not separated from the family, then he doesn't have to worry about the guy running out and finding his family unguarded, because he's with his family where he belongs, waiting for the police, barricaded.
And apparently she had followed, not in that situation, but in this one, she had followed him outside because at one point he called out to her. So she's not in the house locked down. She's roaming around out of curiosity. I mean, it's just an incredibly dangerous situation.
And the concern I still have is how many friends are around the garage.
Right.
You don't know. You're in a very, very dangerous situation.
Somebody could be waiting in the car for him. I'm good with that. The fact of the matter was that in the crime report it says that he was wounded and that he was medevaced out and he did stand trial, just for history's sake. But let me ask you this. Okay, you're in the garage, you've got him at gunpoint, you're going to now make the decision. Am I turning him loose, walking him to the door and saying, adios, or am I holding him? I keep going back to that point.
if you're going to hold somebody, you better have thought through that and not wing it. You don't want to engage in conversation with them. You don't want to look at their face. You don't want to give them any opportunity. So if someone has thought through that process and someone has pre-visualized that happening, then that may be an option, but most of us haven't.
Okay, there are no schools that I know of for civilians who would teach you how to detain someone. No one wants to touch that subject, and why?
Well, again, it's not the doctrine that we want to provide, at least not at ICE Training Company. It's not something, I don't want people thinking that their job is to detain someone. Now, when asked, and it comes up a lot in classes, what should I do, what would I do, how could I do this? In this situation, you find let's say he went out in the garage to get into his car in the morning to go to work, and he found somebody. Now, that guy didn't do anything wrong. He didn't rush out to see what was going on. He's just in the garage, he finds somebody out there, he pulls a gun, he says, stop what you're doing. And now he can't let him go because his kids are inside or his wife is inside the house. What do? You turn him around, you have him sit down, put your hands on your head. It doesn't have to be fancy, right? Everybody's seen everything on the television. They've watched the news reports. They've seen cops. They sit down on the ground, face away, put your hand on top of your head, and then you get the police coming. But you don't, as far as tying somebody up or laying them out on the ground or searching them or interviewing them, that's not your place.
Okay. Well, we're out of time. We have to go. Folks, I know that you have a lot of information that you would like to share with me on this. This could go on for hours with this discussion. I'll see you again next week. Be safe, be trained, be alert.